obvious that the panel is thinking of a rate rejig and will consider one on the back of falling GST revenues. One wonders, is it really a good idea? Could a GST rate hike be a blunder, even though it's an attempt to shore up revenues? Joining me to discuss more on the 18th GST meet, the meet on 18th of December that everyone's waiting for, is MS Money, partner Deloitte India, and VS Krishnan, retired member of the GST CBEC. Welcome to both of you and thank you for speaking with us. So, Mani, everyone now agrees that we are looking at a possible rate hike. We don't know in which bracket and how much, but there seems to be now a consensus that there's no other way.
Yeah, that's what I have been reading and hearing, Tamanna. But the way I look at it is within 2 years of GST, with all the changes that we have seen, rates and process and procedure and IT, one more round of rate hikes will actually make it very difficult for business. So I really wish there was some way of avoiding a rate increase. But assuming a rate increase is inevitable, I would expect that the changes in rates would be very minimal and they would not be across the board and across sectors, because there are a few sectors which are not doing too well, and at this stage burdening them with an additional GST will make things even more difficult for them. So I just hope that the rate increases are very well calibrated. If these are in respect of certain products where there is an issue of inverted duty structure, that's understandable. If these are again with respect to some cess increases on a few products which are subject to cess, again it can be possibly understood. But if we are going to see an across the board increase in GST at a point in time when we are already seeing some kind of a demand slowdown, some kind of an economic slowdown, it would be extremely difficult for businesses to handle that situation.
Mr. Krishnan, how do you look at this? First of all, not good for business, and even from the economic side, we're in the middle of a consumption slowdown right now. Is increasing rates the right way?
Yeah, I think Tamanna, the first thing is they've got to replenish the cess collections. So any rate increase must first focus on improving the cess collections so that the states are given their due amounts. I think it's critical that states get the due share of revenue in time, for otherwise it will affect their expenditure and you could see cuts in capital expenditure in the states, which is not desirable. I think so cess collections need to be increased. And the other point is that you don't do rate hikes during a growth recession period. So what I think the government should do is look at phasing out exemptions first, especially look at those items which were dutiable pre-GST but which are exempt now. So you could look at phasing out those exemptions, because then you will get more products into the GST value chain.
What do you think will be the space where the GST Council will actually go ahead with its tinkering? Mani, let me come to you on that. Now, there is a wide range of things that people are talking about. One is increasing the 5% slab to 6 to 8%. Some parties and some states like Kerala saying that to increase the 18% to 22%. Where do you think they have the most scope actually to tinker?
I think we have to be very clear in terms of the boundary conditions that are there for GST. First and foremost being the fact that I understand again from the media that 60% of the collections come from items which are in the 18% slab. 22% of the collections come from items which are in the 28% slab. And 13% of the collections come from the 12% slab, which means that the 5% and the slabs below that in respect of gold and precious metal possibly constitute 6 to 7% of the total GST collections. If we keep these boundary conditions in mind and assuming this data is correct, What that implies is if we are going to tinker with the 5% rate, that's not going to give us a great amount of collection. So if we are looking at collections as the only reason why the GST rate should be tinkered with, to my mind, it's not correct. And second, it will cause a large amount of economic distortion. So when we look at the 5%, for instance, if the 5% goes to 6 or 7 or 8, as is being said, this will be extremely inflationary, because bear in mind that the 5% rate is applied on essential goods, products of mass consumption, things which are of everyday use by large section of the population. Any increase in this is bound to be inflationary, and I'm not sure whether we can afford an inflationary spiral coming from GST at this point in time when we are seeing a slowdown. On the other hand, when we look at 18%, the 18% includes two segments. It includes goods, it includes services. For services, pre-GST, the rate of tax was 15, and that has already gone up to 18. Now, if we are saying that it's going to go up further from 18 to 20 or 22, again, that's going to cause a difference.
Yeah.
If we are going to keep services at 18, but we are going to move goods to 20 or 22, we are again not going to have a similar rate for goods and services, which was the primary reason why we introduced, GST. So any which ways we look at it, if we try to tinker around with the slabs, it is going to cause certain amount of economic distortion. It's also going to be inflationary. Possibly, therefore, there could be certain products, as Mr. Krishnan mentioned, which prior to GST were attracting a VAT or an excise or service tax in some cases, but which are exempt in GST. Possibly we could look at that. We could also look at a very limited rationalization of cess on a few products. We could look at some of the items which are possibly in the 18% slab, and to see whether these are truly products which are consumed by large number of people, or whether some luxury items have come in. So I have been reading about items such as pink salt, which is taxed at 5%, linen, which is taxed at 5%, and possibly there needs to be a debate on whether these items should be at 5 or should be at 12 or some other rate. But if you're talking of an across the board increase, we should all be mindful of the fact that it's going to change the GST architecture completely, which possibly is not the intention 2 years after GST is introduced.
Mr. Krishnan, how do you look at this? Do you think that this is truly the only option right now before the GST Council? And let's look at this. You have a central government which is facing pressure with delays in compensation packages given to states. You have state governments reeling under their own pressure, and maybe altogether they may decide, okay, let's increase revenues. Governments love increasing revenues and taxes. But do you think this is the right move looking at where the economy is right now?
I think they should not look at large-scale rate changes now, because I think they must first address the cess issue and boost up those collections, and look at rate rationalization only after expanding the base. Today you have large items which are not in the taxable base. Natural gas is not there, ATF is not there, electricity is out, real estate is out. So I think in terms of medium term and long term, rate rationalization will have to first await a general expansion of the tax base, because only then can you sort of realistically estimate what is the kind of rate changes required for a revenue neutral rate. So I think the expansion of the taxable base, GST base, must be addressed, and only then a general rate reconfiguration should be thought about.
Absolutely. We'll wait and see what comes out of the GST meet. Last question, Mani, do you think that there will be much more on the anvil? Because remember, all of this time we were hoping for more simplification. But if there is indeed an increase in rates, we're going to look at more complication of this tax.
That's a very good point that you're making, Tamanna, and that is precisely what many of us in the tax fraternity have been stating, that when GST was introduced, the intention was to combine many taxes into one tax, make it simple, make it easy to comply, drive more compliance. Now that, I guess, has happened to some extent, but much more needs to be done. So at this stage, if we try to bring in more number of slabs or more number of rates or try to change the basic architecture of GST as it is really expecting too much from businesses. Because bear in mind, each time there is a GST rate change or each time there is a GST process change, all businesses have to start looking at their supply chain, reevaluate some of their vendor strategies, look at from whom they are buying, look at to whom they are selling, look at the invoicing model, look at their IT architecture. It involves a lot of work for businesses. At the present stage, when we are seeing some kind of a consumption slowdown, possibly we should be allowing businesses to focus more at their side in terms of demand creation, how they can make the economy grow faster, and possibly their attention will now get a little diverted to looking and addressing GST issues on an ongoing basis.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mani and Mr. Krishnan, for joining us in decoding what happens next. That 18 December meet will be crucial. We have our eye on it.